Xenia stood at the edge of the landing platform, her heart pounding in her chest as she gazed at the sprawling metropolis below. New York City, they called it. A city that was both ancient and modern, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. From her vantage point, the city was a dazzling tapestry of lights and colors, stretching as far as the eye could see. Skyscrapers pierced the heavens, their glass facades reflecting the twilight in a kaleidoscope of hues, while below, the streets teemed with life. Humans going about their daily routines, unaware of the alien visitor who had just set foot on their planet. The air was different here, thicker with the scent of asphalt, fuel, and something distinctly human, an aroma that was both foreign and intoxicating. Xenia inhaled deeply, letting the unfamiliar smells fill her lungs as she tried to steady her nerves. She had spent years preparing for this moment, studying Earth's culture, its languages, its people. But nothing could have truly prepared her for the overwhelming reality of being here among them. Her holographic device hummed softly against her skin, ensuring that she appeared just like any other human woman. To the casual observer, she was a striking young woman with smooth, olive skin, deep brown eyes, and long, dark hair that cascaded down her back in soft waves. But beneath the facade, Xenia was an alien, a native of Arendor, a planet far removed from Earth, both in distance and in culture. On Arendor, the men were delicate and slender, with features that were often described as ethereal. Their strength was not measured in muscle mass or physical prowess, but in their agility, intellect, and grace. Xenia had grown up surrounded by these men, their soft voices and gentle hands a constant in her life. But here on Earth, she had already sensed something vastly different, a raw, almost primal energy that seemed to pulse beneath the surface of the human men she had seen from afar. As she descended the platform and made her way into the city, Xenia couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. The city was alive with sound, honking horns, distant sirens, the chatter of thousands of voices blending into a symphony of urban life. She moved through the throngs of people, her senses on high alert, absorbing everything she could about this new world. Her first stop was a nearby park, a green oasis nestled among the towering buildings. She had read about these parks in her studies, places where humans went to escape the hustle and bustle of city life, to reconnect with nature, however limited that might be in such a concrete jungle. As she entered the park, Xenia was struck by the contrast between the manicured lawns and the wildness of the trees, their leaves rustling softly in the evening breeze. It was here, in this serene setting, that she encountered her first group of human men up close. They were jogging along a path that wound through the park, their feet pounding against the pavement in a steady rhythm. Xenia watched them from a distance at first, her curiosity piqued. Their bodies were unlike anything she had seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with muscles that rippled beneath their skin as they moved. Their faces were flushed with exertion, their brows glistening with sweat, yet they moved with a confidence and ease that fascinated her. One of the men, a particularly muscular individual with a square jaw and piercing blue eyes, glanced in her direction as he passed by. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Xenia felt a jolt of electricity run through her. She quickly averted her gaze, her cheeks warming in a way that was completely new to her. On Arendor, she had never experienced such a visceral reaction to a man's appearance. There, beauty was ethereal, almost delicate, and attraction was more of an intellectual connection than a physical one. But here in this moment, Xenia couldn't deny the raw magnetism she felt. It was as if the very air around her had changed, charged with an energy that made her pulse quicken. As the men continued on their run, Xenia found herself following them with her eyes, studying the way their muscles contracted and relaxed with each stride, the powerful way they moved through the space around them. It was mesmerizing, and she found herself wondering what it would be like to be close to such strength, to feel the solidity of a human man's body next to hers. Shaking herself from her reverie, Xenia forced herself to focus. She had a mission here on Earth, and it wasn't to indulge in idle fantasies about human men. Yet, as she continued to explore the park, she couldn't help but notice the abundance of male physicality on display. There were men lifting weights in a small outdoor gym, their bodies glistening in the setting sun, their muscles straining under the heavy loads. Others played sports, their movements agile and powerful, their voices raised in competitive banter. Xenia's mind raced as she tried to reconcile what she was seeing with her own understanding of attractiveness. On Arendor, she had never been particularly drawn to the men of her world. They were beautiful, certainly, but in a way that felt distant, almost untouched. Here, however, there was something about the raw physicality of human men that stirred something deep within her, a feeling she couldn't quite name but that she knew she wanted to explore further. As the day turned to night, Xania made her way to the corporate apartment that had been arranged for her. It was a sleek, modern space high above the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the skyline. She stood by the window, looking out at the sea of lights below, her thoughts still swirling with everything she had experienced that day. The city buzzed with life, even as darkness fell, and Xania found herself wondering what other surprises this world had in store for her. She thought of the men she had seen, their powerful bodies, their confident strides, the way they seemed to command the space around. It was also different from what she had known, and yet it was thrilling in a way she hadn't anticipated. Xania knew that her time on Earth would be a journey of discovery, not just of this new world and its people, but of herself as well. She would have to navigate the complexities of human society, all while keeping her true identity a secret. But as she stood there, looking out over the city, she felt a surge of determination. This was the beginning of something new, something that would challenge her in ways she had never imagined. And deep down, she knew that she was ready for it. As she prepared for bed, Xania couldn't help but smile to herself. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to explore, to learn, to understand the world she had only ever read about in books. And perhaps she thought as she drifted off to sleep, to discover something about herself that she had never known before. The night outside was alive with the hum of the city, a lullaby that carried her into a deep, dreamless sleep. And in the silence of her room, the only sound was the soft, rhythmic beating of her heart, steady, strong, and full of anticipation for the days to come. The first light of dawn broke through the skyline, casting a warm, golden hue over the city that was slowly coming to life. Xania awoke to the gentle hum of Earth's early morning, a stark contrast to the artificial dawns of Arendor. Here, the sunrise was a slow, graceful affair, a gradual shift from darkness to light that felt almost sacred. She sat up in bed, letting the rays of sunlight wash over her as she collected her thoughts. Her mind drifted back to the previous day, the park, the men, the overwhelming sensations that had coursed through her as she observed the human world up close. The memory of the joggers, their powerful bodies in motion, still lingered in her mind, stirring a curiosity that she couldn't easily dismiss. After a quick breakfast, Xania decided to continue her exploration of the city. She dressed in simple attire, a pair of dark jeans and a soft, fitted blouse that she had purchased the day before. The clothes were comfortable and helped her blend in with the locals, a crucial aspect of maintaining her cover. Her holographic device, as always, was firmly in place, ensuring that her alien features remained hidden. As she stepped out onto the bustling streets, the city greeted her with its usual mix of sights and sounds. The air was cooler in the morning, with a slight breeze that rustled the leaves of the trees lining the sidewalks. Xania felt a sense of anticipation as she made her way through the crowd, her mind focused on a particular destination, a well-known gym located not far from her apartment. She had read about this gym in one of the many articles she had studied before her arrival on Earth. It was a place frequented by some of the city's most dedicated fitness enthusiasts, a haven for those who valued strength and physical prowess. Xania was eager to observe these men up close, to see if her initial impressions would hold true in a setting where their strength was put to the test. The gym was a sleek, modern building with large windows that offered a glimpse of the activity inside. As she approached, Xania could see men lifting weights, their muscles straining with effort, their faces set in expressions of determination. The sight was both fascinating and a little intimidating. These men were unlike anyone she had ever encountered on Arendor. Xania stepped inside, the cool air-conditioned space a welcome respite from the warmth of the day. The sound of clanking weights and the occasional grunt of exertion filled the air, creating an atmosphere that was both intense and focused. She felt a surge of excitement as she took in her surroundings, her eyes drawn to the men who were engaged in various forms of exercise. One man, in particular, caught her attention. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a body that seemed to have been sculpted from stone. His muscles bulged with every movement, his skin slick with sweat as he hoisted a heavy barbell above his head. Xania watched in awe as he performed his repetitions with precision and power, each movement a testament to his strength. As she observed him, Xenia found herself captivated not just by his physical appearance, but by the sheer force of his presence. There was a confidence in the way he moved, a certainty that came from knowing his own strength and capabilities. It was a quality that Xenia had never seen in the men of her world, where physical prowess was rarely celebrated or even acknowledged. Her fascination grew as she continued to watch the men around her. Some were engaged in weightlifting, their bodies straining under the pressure of the heavy equipment. Others were running on treadmills, their legs moving in a blur of motion, their breathing steady and controlled. Xenia noticed the way their muscles flexed and rippled with each movement, the way their skin glistened with sweat under the bright lights of the gym. It was also different from what she had known, and yet it was undeniably alluring. The men of Earth seemed to embody a kind of raw, untamed strength that Xenia found herself drawn to in ways she hadn't expected. It wasn't just their physical appearance that intrigued her. It was the way they carried themselves, the way they seemed so at ease in their own bodies, so comfortable with their power. After a while, Xenia moved to a corner of the gym where she could observe without drawing too much attention to herself. She noticed that the men seemed to form a kind of unspoken camaraderie, offering each other encouragement and advice as they worked out. There was a sense of mutual respect among them, a bond forged through shared effort and discipline. One of the men, a slightly older gentleman with graying hair and a wiry build, caught her eye as he approached the bench press. He wasn't as muscular as some of the others, but there was a quiet determination in his eyes that commanded attention. Xenia watched as he carefully positioned himself on the bench, taking a deep breath before lifting the barbell. The weights clanged as he pressed them upward, his face contorting with effort. Xenia found herself holding her breath, her eyes locked on the man as he completed his set. When he finally lowered the barbell back onto the rack, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The man sat up, wiping the sweat from his brow with a towel, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. He gave her a small nod, a gesture of acknowledgement that made her heart skip a beat. It was a simple interaction, but it held a weight that Xenia couldn't quite explain. There was something about the way these men interacted with the world around them, with each other, with their environment. That was deeply compelling. They were strong, yes, but there was also a softness to them, a sense of camaraderie and mutual support that Xenia hadn't expected. As the morning wore on, Xenia found herself drawn to a group of men who were gathered around a set of heavyweights. They were engaged in what appeared to be a friendly competition, each taking turns to see who could lift the most weight. The atmosphere was lighthearted, filled with good-natured banter and laughter, but there was also a palpable tension in the air as they prepared for each lift. One of the men, a dark-haired individual with a broad chest and powerful arms, stepped up to the barbell, his expression one of intense concentration. Xenia watched as he bent down, gripping the bar with both hands, his knuckles turning white with the effort. There was a brief moment of silence as he prepared himself, and then, with a mighty effort, he lifted the barbell off the ground. The others cheered him on as he strained under the weight, his muscles bulging with the effort. Xenia felt a thrill of excitement as she watched him, her heart pounding in time with his exertion. When he finally managed to lift the barbell all the way up, the room erupted in applause, and Xenia found herself smiling, caught up in the energy of the moment. As the men congratulated each other, Xenia felt a deep sense of admiration for what she had witnessed. These men weren't just strong, they were resilient, determined, and unafraid to push themselves to their limits. There was a beauty in their strength, a kind of rugged elegance that was both foreign and captivating. Xenia spent the rest of the morning observing the men at the gym, taking in every detail. The way their muscles moved beneath their skin, the way their expressions changed as they pushed through their workouts, the way they supported each other with words of encouragement and shared laughter. It was a world that was entirely new to her, and yet she felt an inexplicable connection to it, as if she had found something she had been searching for without even realizing it. When she finally left the gym, the sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows on the pavement as she made her way back to her apartment. Xenia's mind was buzzing with everything she had experienced that day, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions and realizations. She had come to Earth expecting to learn about a new culture, to immerse herself in the ways of a different world, but what she hadn't anticipated was how deeply this world would affect her, how the sight of human men with their powerful bodies and unshakable confidence would challenge everything she thought she knew about attraction, strength, and beauty. As she walked through the bustling streets of the city, Xenia couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation for what lay ahead. There was so much more to discover, so much more to learn about these fascinating beings who seemed to embody a kind of strength and vitality that was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Xenia's journey on Earth had only just begun, but already she could feel herself changing, evolving in ways she hadn't expected. The allure of human strength was a powerful force, drawing her deeper into a world that was both exhilarating and terrifying in its intensity. And as she made her way back to the comfort of her apartment, Xenia knew that she was ready to embrace whatever challenges and discoveries the future might hold. The men of Earth had opened her eyes to a new kind of beauty, a new way of seeing the world and herself, and for the first time in her life, Xenia felt truly alive, ready to explore the depths of her own desires and the possibilities that lay ahead. Xenia's days on Earth began to settle into a rhythm, a balance between her duties at the corporation and her personal exploration of the human world. Yet, as each day passed, one figure began to stand out more and more in her mind. Alex, her boss, a man who embodied the strength and confidence she had come to admire so deeply in human men. Alex had a magnetic presence that was impossible to ignore. He was a man in his early 30s with a strong jawline, sharp blue eyes, and a physique that hinted at years of dedication to maintaining his body. He carried himself with an air of authority, but not in an overbearing way. Instead, it was a quiet confidence, a sense of calm control that commanded respect from everyone around him. Xenia had noticed the way people reacted to him, the way they seemed to stand a little straighter when he entered the room, the way his opinions were sought and valued. For Xenia, there was something irresistibly alluring about Alex. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though that certainly played a role. It was the way he moved through the world with such ease, the way he seemed to know exactly who he was and what he wanted. On Arendor, men like Alex simply didn't exist. The men of her world were gentle and soft-spoken, their beauty more ethereal than physical. But Alex was different. He was grounded, solid, a force of nature that drew Xenia in with a pull she could hardly. Their interactions at work were professional, of course. Xenia was careful to maintain the boundaries expected of an employee and her superior. But there was an unspoken connection between them, a subtle undercurrent of tension that neither of them acknowledged but both of them felt. It was in the way Alex's gaze would linger on her just a moment too long, the way he seemed to seek her out in meetings, asking for her opinions even when they weren't strictly necessary. Xenia tried to ignore the growing attraction she felt for him, reminding herself that she was here on a mission, that her true identity could never be revealed. But as the days turned into weeks, it became harder and harder to push those feelings aside. She found herself looking forward to their interactions, anticipating the moments when their paths would cross, savoring the thrill that came with each exchange of words, each shared glance. One afternoon, Alex approached her desk with a warm smile. He was dressed in a tailored suit, the fabric hugging his broad shoulders and tapering down to his slim waist. Xenia's heart skipped a beat as he leaned casually against the edge of her desk, his eyes locked on hers. "Xenia," he said, his voice smooth and confident, "I've noticed that you've been working incredibly hard lately. How about we take a break from the office and get some fresh air? There's a great little cafe not too far from here. My treat?" Xenia hesitated for only a moment before nodding, unable to resist the pull of spending time with him outside the confines of the office. "That sounds nice," she replied, keeping her tone neutral even as her heart raced. The cafe was a cozy, unassuming place nestled between two tall buildings, with outdoor seating that offered a view of the bustling street. The atmosphere was relaxed, a stark contrast to the high-stakes environment of the corporate world they were used to. They chose a table outside, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over them as they settled into their seats. As they sipped their drinks, the conversation flowed easily. Alex was charming and engaging, effortlessly drawing Xenia into discussions about a variety of topics. They talked about everything from their favorite books to the best places to eat in the city. Alex shared stories from his travels, describing the places he had visited and the people he had met, while Xenia listened intently, absorbing every word. But there was more to their conversation than just idle chatter. Xenia could sense that Alex was genuinely interested in getting to know her, in understanding what made her tick. He asked about her background, her interests, her thoughts on life in the city, Xenia answered as best she could without revealing too much, crafting her responses carefully to maintain her cover. At one point, Alex leaned back in his chair, studying her with a thoughtful expression. "You're different from anyone I've ever met, Xenia," he said, his voice low and serious. "There's something about you that I can't quite put my finger on. It's like you see the world in a way that most people don't." Xenia felt a jolt of panic at his words, wondering if he had somehow seen through her holographic disguise, if he had discovered her true identity. But the look in his eyes was one of admiration, not suspicion, and she forced herself to relax. "I've always been curious about the world," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "I guess that makes me see things a little differently. There's so much to learn, so much to experience. I'm just trying to take it all in." Alex smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made her heart flutter. "I think that's a good way to live." Too many people get stuck in their routines, never stopping to appreciate the beauty of the world around them. It's refreshing to meet someone who sees things from a different perspective. They continued talking as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. Xenia found herself relaxing more and more in Alex's presence, the tension she had felt earlier melting away as they connected on a deeper level. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so at ease with someone, so comfortable just being herself, or at least the version of herself that she presented to the world. After they finished their drinks, Alex suggested they take a walk through the nearby park. Xenia agreed, grateful for the opportunity to spend more time with him. As they strolled through the park, the conversation shifted to more personal topics. Alex opened up about his life, sharing stories about his childhood, his family, and the challenges he had faced in his career. Xenia listened intently, fascinated by the glimpse into his world. In turn, Xenia shared what she could about her own life, carefully crafting a narrative that was close enough to the truth to be believable, but still vague enough to protect her secret. She spoke about growing up in a small, isolated community, an allusion to her life on Arendor, and how she had always been drawn to the idea of exploring new places, experiencing new things. She told him about her passion for learning, for discovering the unknown, and how it had ultimately led her to. As they walked, the conversation took on a more intimate tone. Alex spoke about his past relationships, about the struggles of balancing his personal life with the demands of his career. Xenia found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't expected, sharing her own thoughts on love, on the complexities of relationships, on the challenges of finding a true connection in a world that often seems so focused on superficial things. There was a moment when they stopped by a small pond, the water shimmering in the fading light. They stood in silence for a few moments, watching the ripples on the surface of the water, the soft sounds of the city fading into the background. Xenia felt a strange sense of peace in that moment, as if time had slowed down, allowing them to exist in their own little bubble, separate from the rest of the world. Alex turned to her, his expression serious but tender. "Xenia," he said quietly, "I know this might be a little forward, but I've really enjoyed getting to know you. There's something about you that I find incredibly intriguing. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'd like to see where this could go." Xenia's heart skipped a beat at his words, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She had known that there was a connection between them, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. She wanted to say yes, to explore this connection, to see where it might lead. But there was a part of her that was terrified of what might happen if he found out the truth about who she really was. She hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "Alex, I feel the same way," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "But there are things about me that you don't know, things that might complicate things between us." Alex reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm and reassuring, and Xenia felt a shiver run through her at the contact. "Whatever it is, we can figure it out together," he said gently. "I'm not going to pressure you into anything you're not ready for, but I think there's something special here, something worth exploring." Xenia looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and determination in them. She knew that he meant what he said, that he was willing to take things slow, to give her the time she needed to sort through her feelings. And in that moment, she realized that she wanted to take that chance, to see where this path might lead, even if it meant risking everything. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's see where this goes." Alex smiled, a smile that lit up his entire face, and Xenia felt a warmth spread through her chest at the sight. They continued their walk, their hands still intertwined, and Xania couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. It was a future that was uncertain, full of challenges and risks, but it was a future that she was ready to face, because she wasn't facing it alone. As the evening wore on and the city lights began to twinkle in the distance, Xania and Alex found themselves back at the entrance to the park. They paused for a moment, standing close to each other, the air between them charged with anticipation. "I'm glad we did this," Alex said softly, his eyes locked on hers. "Me too," Xania replied, her voice filled with genuine warmth. They stood there for a moment longer, neither one wanting to break the spell that had been cast over them. Finally, Alex leaned down, his lips brushing gently against Xania's cheek in a tender, lingering kiss. It was a simple gesture, but it held a promise of more to come, of a connection that had only just begun to unfold. As they parted ways that evening, Xania felt a sense of exhilaration that she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that she was treading on dangerous ground, that her relationship with Alex could complicate her mission in ways she hadn't anticipated. But she also knew that she couldn't ignore the feelings that were growing inside her, the attraction that had drawn her to him from the very beginning. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Xania felt a deep sense of belonging, a sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And as she made her way back to her apartment, her thoughts full of Alex and the possibilities that lay ahead, she couldn't help but smile to herself. This was just the beginning of something new, something that had the potential to change everything. And Xania was ready to embrace whatever came next, ready to explore the depths of her own heart, ready to see where this journey would take her. The city lights shimmered in the distance, a beacon of hope in the darkness. And as Xania drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were filled with the promise of a future that was as bright and full of possibilities as the world she had come to know on Earth. The days that followed Xania's walk with Alex were a whirlwind of emotion and discovery. She found herself thinking about him constantly, replaying their conversations in her mind, analyzing every word, every glance, every touch. There was a magnetic pull between them, something that went beyond mere physical attraction. It was as if they were connected by an invisible thread, drawing them closer together with each passing day. Xania had always prided herself on being logical, on keeping her emotions in check. But Alex had a way of disarming her, of making her feel things she had never felt before. It wasn't just the way he looked at her, or the way his voice sent shivers down her spine. It was the way he made her feel seen, understood, valued. It was a feeling she hadn't realized she had been missing until now, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. They began spending more time together outside of work, finding excuses to meet for coffee or lunch, taking long walks through the city, or simply sitting together in a quiet park, talking about everything and nothing. The more Xania got to know Alex, the more she found herself drawn to him. He was intelligent, kind, and had a sharp wit that kept her on her toes. He challenged her, made her think, made her laugh in a way that felt effortless. After dinner, Alex suggested they take a walk along the river, and Xania agreed, eager to prolong their time together. The night air was cool and crisp, the city lights reflecting off the water as they strolled along the riverbank. The tension that had been building between them all evening was still there, but it had shifted, deepened into something more profound, more intense. As they walked, Alex slipped his arm around Xania's shoulders, pulling her close. She leaned into him, savoring the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. They walked in silence for a while, simply enjoying the comfort of each other's presence, the peace that came with being together. Eventually, they found a secluded spot by the water where they stopped to take in the view. The city skyline was a glittering array of lights, the buildings towering above them like sentinels guarding the night. Xania felt a sense of awe at the beauty of it all, at the realization that she was standing here on this planet with a man who made her feel more alive than she had ever felt before. Alex turned to her, his expression serious but tender. "Xania," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "I want you to know that I'm falling for you. Hard. And I don't want to rush things, but I also don't want to hold back how I feel." Xania's breath caught in her throat at his words, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known, on some level, that their relationship was moving in this direction, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real, all the more intense. "I'm falling for you too, Alex," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I never expected this to happen, but I'm glad it did." Alex smiled, a slow, genuine smile that made her heart ache with affection. He reached out, cupping her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. "I've been waiting for someone like you, Xenia," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Someone who sees me for who I am. Someone who makes me want to be a better person." Xenia felt tears welling up in her eyes again, and she blinked them back, overwhelmed by the depth of his feelings, by the intensity of the connection they shared. She had never felt anything like this before, and it scared her, but it also filled her with a sense of hope, of possibility. "Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I'm scared. I'm scared of how much I care about you, how much I want this to work." Alex leaned in closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I'm scared too," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "But I'm also excited. I'm excited to see where this goes, to explore what we could have together." For a moment, they simply stood there, their foreheads pressed together, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them, connected by something that went beyond words, beyond reason. And then slowly, almost tentatively, Alex closed the distance between them, his lips brushing against hers in a soft, tentative kiss. Xenia's heart skipped a beat at the contact, a thrill of electricity shooting through her body. She leaned into the kiss, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more passionate, as if they were both trying to convey everything they felt, everything they couldn't put into words. Xenia felt a fire ignite within her, a burning desire that threatened to consume her whole. She had never felt anything like this before. This overwhelming need, this intense longing for more. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless, their hearts racing in unison. Alex's eyes were dark with desire, his hands still cradling her face as if she were something precious, something fragile. "Xenia," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "I've wanted to do that for so long." Xenia smiled, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Me too," she whispered, her voice trembling with the intensity of her feelings. They stood there for a moment longer, their foreheads still touching, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. Xenia felt a deep sense of contentment, of belonging, as if she had finally found the place where she was meant to be. But beneath the happiness, beneath the joy of the moment, there was a flicker of fear, a fear that this connection, this bond, was too good to be true, that it could all come crashing down if Alex ever discovered the truth about who she really was. For now, though, Xenia pushed those fears aside, choosing instead to focus on the here and now, on the man who had captured her heart, who had made her feel things she had never imagined possible. As they walked back to her apartment, hand in hand, Xenia knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles they would have to overcome, but she also knew that she was ready to face them, as long as Alex was by her side. And as they stood outside her apartment building, sharing one last lingering kiss under the light of the street lamp, Xenia felt a sense of hope for the future. A future that was as bright and full of possibilities as the city lights that sparkled in the distance. It was a future that she was ready to embrace, a future that she was ready to build with Alex one step at a time. And in that moment, as they parted ways with a promise to see each other again soon, Xenia knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The days after Xenia and Alex's kiss passed in a blur, each one filled with anticipation and a growing sense of urgency. Their relationship had taken a significant step forward, and while the connection between them deepened, so too did the weight of the secret Xenia carried. She had known from the beginning that her dual identity, an alien from Arendor hiding in plain sight on Earth, would eventually come to light. But now, as her feelings for Alex intensified, the prospect of revealing the truth became all the more daunting. Every time she was with him, she found herself wanting to be completely open, to tell him everything, but the fear of losing him held her back. How could she expect him to understand? How could she ask him to accept something so extraordinary, so otherworldly? Yet the longer she kept the truth from him, the more the guilt gnawed at her, threatening to unravel the bond they had worked so hard to build. One evening, after a particularly long and grueling day at work, Xenia found herself alone in her apartment, the city's lights twinkling outside her window like distant stars. She stood by the window, staring out at the bustling streets below, her thoughts a tangled mess of emotions. She had never felt so conflicted, so torn between her desire to protect her secret and her need to be honest with the man she was falling in love with. The decision was inevitable. She knew that. If their relationship was to have any chance of surviving, she would have to tell him the truth. The thought terrified her, but it was a fear she could no longer ignore. She couldn't keep living a lie, couldn't keep hiding who she truly was. Alex deserved to know the truth, and she owed it to herself to give him the chance to accept or reject her for who she really was. The next day, Xenia called Alex and asked him to meet her at her apartment that evening. Her voice was calm, but her heart was pounding as she spoke, each word carrying the weight of the decision she had made. Alex, sensing the seriousness in her tone, agreed without hesitation, his voice filled with concern and curiosity. The hours until their meeting dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Xenia spent the day in a state of anxious anticipation, her mind racing with thoughts of how the conversation would. She rehearsed the words in her head over and over, trying to find the right way to explain the impossible, to make him understand that the woman he had fallen for was not entirely human. By the time evening arrived, Xenia was a bundle of nerves. She had changed outfits several times, finally settling on a simple dress that made her feel both comfortable and confident. She needed to feel grounded, strong, as she prepared to reveal the truth. The apartment was dimly lit, the soft glow of the lamps casting long shadows on the walls. It was a serene, almost intimate setting, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside her. When the doorbell rang, Xenia's heart leapt into her throat. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before crossing the room to open the door. There stood Alex, his expression a mixture of concern and affection. He stepped inside, immediately sensing the tension in the air. "Xenia, is everything okay?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine worry. Xenia nodded, though her nerves were still on edge. "Yes, no, I'm fine. But there's something I need to tell you, something important." Alex's brow furrowed as he followed her into the living room, where they both sat down on the couch. He reached out, taking her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "Whatever it is, you can tell me," he said softly. "You know I'm here for you, no matter what." Xenia felt a surge of emotion at his words, a reminder of why she had fallen for him in the first place. He was steady, reliable, someone she could count on. But would he still be that man after she revealed her secret? She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Alex, there's something about me that you don't know, something I've been keeping from you since the day we met. I haven't been entirely honest with you, and I'm sorry for that, but I need to tell you now, before things go any further between us." Alex's grip on her hand tightened slightly, a silent gesture of support. "Whatever it is, Xenia, I'm listening." Xenia swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment of truth. "Alex, I'm not from here. I'm not from Earth. I'm from a planet called Arendor in a distant galaxy. I'm an alien, and I've been living here in disguise, using technology to blend in with humans." For a moment, there was only silence. Xenia watched Alex's face closely, searching for any sign of disbelief, of rejection. But his expression remained calm, though his eyes had widened slightly in surprise. "You're an alien?" he repeated slowly, as if testing the words on his tongue. Xenia nodded, her heart in her throat. "Yes, I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's the truth. I've been living here on Earth for a while now, trying to learn about your world, your culture, my appearance, my identity. It's all a disguise. The real me looks very different." Alex was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. Xenia could see the wheels turning in his mind, processing what she had just told him. She braced herself for the worst, for the moment when he would get up and walk out the door, leaving her alone with her secret. But then, to her surprise, Alex let out a breath, his expression softening. "Xenia," he said quietly, "I'm not going to lie. This is a lot to take in, but I've always known there was something different about you, something special. And honestly, it doesn't change how I feel about you." Xenia blinked, her heart skipping a beat. "It doesn't?" Alex shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "No, you're still the same person I've been getting to know, the same person I've been falling for. It doesn't matter to me where you're from or what you really look like. What matters is who you are and who we are together." Tears welled up in Xenia's eyes, a wave of relief and gratitude washing over her. She had been so afraid of this moment, so terrified of losing him, but here he was, accepting her in a way she hadn't dared to hope for. "But Alex," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "you haven't even seen the real me. What if you don't like what you see?" Alex reached up, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "I don't care what you look like, Xenia. I care about you. And if you're ready to show me who you really are, Then I'm ready to see it. Xania felt a lump in her throat as she nodded, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed, but she knew this was a leap she had to take. Slowly, she reached up and deactivated the holographic device hidden beneath her skin. There was a brief shimmer in the air around her, and then her true form was revealed. Xania's alien appearance was strikingly beautiful, though vastly different from her human disguise. Her skin was a soft shade of lavender with a slight iridescence that caught the light. Her eyes were larger and more almond-shaped, a deep, shimmering violet that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe within them. Her hair was long and flowing, a silvery white that cascaded down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. For a moment there was only silence as Alex took in her true form. Xania held her breath, waiting for his reaction, her heart pounding in her chest. And then to her immense relief, Alex smiled. A genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "You're beautiful," he said softly, his voice filled with awe. "Even more beautiful than before." Xania let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, a sense of profound relief washing over her. She had feared that revealing her true self would drive him away, but instead, it had only deepened the connection between them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for accepting me, for seeing me." Alex reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Xania, I've always seen you. This," he gestured to her alien form, "is just another part of who you are, and I wouldn't change a thing about you." Tears filled Xania's eyes as she leaned into his touch, her heart swelling with love for this man who had accepted her in a way she had never thought possible. She had been so afraid of revealing her true self, so terrified of being rejected, but Alex had shown her that love, real love, transcended all boundaries, all differences. They sat there for a long time, simply holding each other, the weight of the revelation slowly lifting as they basked in the warmth of their connection. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Xania felt truly at peace, knowing that she no longer had to hide who she was, that she no longer had to live in fear of being discovered. As the night wore on, they talked about everything. About Xania's life on Erendor, about her reasons for coming to Earth, about the challenges she had faced in trying to fit into a world so different from her own. Alex listened with rapt attention, his eyes never leaving hers as she spoke. He asked questions, sought to understand her experiences, her struggles, her hopes for the future. In turn, Xania learned more about Alex, about his own hopes and dreams, about the life he had built for himself on Earth. They talked about the future, about what their relationship would look like now that the truth was out in the open. There were still many challenges ahead, many obstacles they would have to overcome, but they both knew that they were stronger together, that their bond had only deepened in the wake of the revelation. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Xania and Alex had fallen into a comfortable silence, their bodies curled together on the couch. The weight of the night's events had left them both emotionally drained, but there was also a sense of contentment, of peace, in the air. Xania looked up at Alex, her heart full of love and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for accepting me, for loving me." Alex smiled down at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. "I love you, Xania," he said softly. "All of you, and I'm not going anywhere." Xania felt tears prick at her eyes again, but this time they were tears of happiness, of relief. She had found something she hadn't even realized she was looking for. Someone who loved her unconditionally, who accepted her for who she was, flaws and all. As they lay there together, the first rays of the sun casting a golden glow over the room, Xania knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, but she was ready to face them, ready to build a future with the man she loved. And as she drifted off to sleep in Alex's arms, her heart full of hope and love, Xania knew that she had finally found her place in the world, a place where she could be herself, where she could be loved, where she could belong. The city outside was waking up, the sounds of life beginning to stir in the streets below. But in that moment, in the quiet stillness of the early morning, Xania felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be, by Alex's side, ready to face whatever the future might hold, together.